Hello and welcome to the Blueprint Within. I am your host, Marley Finnegan, and I am so honored today to be joined by my crew, the Viridescent crew, an intentional community fostering conscious connection and conversation, supporting all variety of change makers. And if you didn't know, you are a change maker. We are all change makers in our own way. And the Veraverse, as we call it, originated as an answer to corporate sustainability burnout, but now has expanded far beyond that lens to encompass people from all over the world, all ages and all walks of life, on the path of self-discovery and intentional expansion. What makes the Veraverse so different is the empathetic communal witnessing of one another within our weekly group gatherings. Today, I'm talking to a group of very mountain men who bravely and vulnerably participated in a rewilding retreat in which we delved into the concepts of unconditional self-love, receiving, and even divine feminine exploration. Welcome to the Blueprint Within.
Thanks, Marley.
Thanks.
Everybody.
I would love for you all to take a moment and briefly introduce yourselves so that everyone knows who is here today.
I'll kick it off. You mentioned all ages. I'm the oldest guy here. I'm Paul Salinger. I live in Oakland, California. I have a few alter egos, but I tend to lean into a beauty embracer as kind of my primary one these days. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about our nature retreat, our rewilding retreat. Rewilding has been a part of our discussion lately, so happy to be here. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Paul. Oh yeah, Jose, you want to jump?
Yeah, I guess it's appropriate to have the oldest and maybe the youngest then coming. So, hi everyone, my name is Jose Miguel. People call me Guti. My alter ego is the symbiotic, which is a turtle, hence the background. And yeah, I live in Santiago de Chile, and super excited to share what we experience as a collective, as an individuals.
I'll hop in next, I guess. I'm Adam DeYoung. I'm the second oldest. We're going by age, I think. And yeah, live in Whitefish, Montana. Had the pleasure of joining you all on this amazing retreat, life-changing, and happy to have the opportunity to sit down and chat with you all about that experience again. My altar is the Movement Guide, which is a grizzly bear. So
yeah, hey everybody. My name's Chance Thompson, and I suppose one of the early designers of our nature retreat kind of concept. But here as of late, my primary alter ego is one of spirited serenity, which is exactly the kind of the balanced and equal version of me that I found out on a retreat in 2025. And for me, it's an honor to share the mountains of Montana, which are home for me, and to be able to experience it with people that I love and care about and believe in. And yeah, I'm just a Montana boy that likes to be outside, so it's a good excuse to get outside for sure.
Amazing. And Chance, can you set the stage for us about where we were and the duration of the retreat and what it was like in terms of the environment?
Yeah, so we experienced the magic of Big Creek Lake, which is nestled in the Bitterroot Mountains, which is just south of Missoula, Montana. And it sits in one of the largest national forests there is, which is the Selway National Forest. And Big Creek Lake is the largest lake in the whole mountain range there. And yeah, I mean, the environment, right? Like you're hiking along the creek as it flows down, you go up, right? When you go in, and that carries you all the way up towards the lake and some of the wonderful places that we stayed and spent our time. The lands that we get to visit and experience. Our retreats at are home to the Salish and Kootenai peoples here, and it's big mountain. It's pretty wild. On the other side of the mountain range that we exist in, there's hundreds and hundreds of miles of like truly rugged wild wilderness. And there's moose and bears and deer and elk and all kinds of birds of prey out there, and it's a wonderful place.
Mhm. And speaking of how wonderful it was, Paul, can you talk about the experience for you being that, it is a beautiful, big and wild mountain, but also it was intentionally made to be accessible for all kinds of people. And how did you find the experience of hiking 6 miles in to where we camped and 6 miles out?
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. I felt a little bit challenged going in. I hadn't really been doing a lot of walking or hiking it, and I had not been actually camping in years and years. So it was definitely a challenge. I was actually quite surprised and quite happy that I could do the 6 miles, though I wasn't really carrying anything. You all were carrying all of my stuff, so that helped quite a lot. Um, but the hike in was gentle enough that I felt good, and the scenery was amazing. The experiences that we had along the trail were amazing, and so hiking in and hiking out actually were fine. I was really happy to do it, and yeah, it was a great experience. I mean, being 76, or at the time I was 75, it was kind of a reimagining of, something that I had been working on for a couple of months already, having been to Scotland and Ireland right before, and being on this whole kind of embrace of beauty tour. And the Big Creek, the Big Creek and the whole hike in is just another extension of all of that. So yeah, it was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I know that not really being a camper myself, I am an athlete and I feel like I'm in pretty decent shape, but I had a lot of nervousness around my capabilities. And in fact, I didn't even have the proper shoes. I wound up wearing Teva sandals for about 30 miles of hiking. So that was wild and awkward, but also it worked. And Jose, you came from Chile. So did you feel like you were really prepared for knowing what to walk into, given, the amazing trail guide spreadsheet and list of all the things that you would need? And did you feel like you had a good setup for what you were walking into?
I felt like I was prepared, but I think nothing prepares you when you're in nature, and then you're always like all of a sudden thinking like, oh, I should have brought this, and maybe yeah, I could have taken this with me. But to be honest, I think in general I felt completely safe, and even though I missed a couple of things, I think as a collective we all supported each other in those moments, and that you were kind of like missing something or needing something. And specifically about the trail, I think that having communication sometimes when you were kind of like tired or just thinking how far are we or how long is it till camping sites, you could just ask and people would say in miles. Of course, that was tricky for me because I use kilometers. So measurement units, it was a topic there. But always knowing that someone knew where we were and how long it would take, kind of like yay sizing it and say like, yeah, probably an hour or so. And it was just like comforting enough to know that you were with someone who knew the trail and that they were prepared for whatever might have happened.
Yay sizing it.
Yeah, I had to bring it. I love the term. For me, it was first time that I encountered the yay size, yay big.
Oh,
that
yay big, like
Yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah, big.
I'll also say that, one of the things that really helped in terms of, my age and, just the challenge of it was that, we had the intentionality of like taking quite a long time to go those 6 miles. We weren't trying to rush. We were trying to, be intentional about taking rests and stopping at, numerous places. So that was really an integral part of it for me was, not having to like feel like I had to like keep up with the group, that I knew that we were going to stop and rest, a number of times.
Yes, and Chance and Adam are both local to Montana and both local to the backcountry and Big Creek Lake and where we took our big adventure. And so, Adam, would love to hear from you about sort of just the preparation and the thought process of being able to prep multiple camps, and just how we really prioritized taking the literal weight off of Paul so that he could have a beautiful experience, and that just for all of our retreat goers, that it becomes more about their, their comfort and safety than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, safety is number one always, right? We're going back into the backcountry, and you don't want any issues to pop up. And that's a component of having an amazing trip. You don't want to have any major issues. So that's always top of mind. But with backcountry, there's always some anxiety around it because there's no quick run to the store. There's no turning around and grabbing something you forgot. So preparation is key, and something Chance and I spent quite a bit of time on to ensure we had the components we needed so that everyone could be comfortable. And so there was a fair bit of planning that went into that first component prior to make sure we had what we needed and distribute the weight out amongst us. Like Paul said, I really appreciated the process by which we got into camp without rushing, and really the journey, whether that would be, step by step in the weight you're carrying on your back, or the journey into rewilding and getting into nature, started the moment we got on the trail. And we took the time to take in, the creek and the sights and the sounds and all the things that we were noticing along the way, which helped those of us who maybe had a little bit more weight on their back as well to take some time and take the weight off and enjoy what we were getting into, and beginning the process of having those conversations about this journey into the woods and what we would be getting into and exploring together. So I felt really well prepared, as well prepared as you can on an expedition like this to get back into the woods, and that we had all the things that we needed and would be in good shape. Probably carrying too much, which is better too much than too little, so that you have whatever it is you do need.
Beautiful. And the themes of the retreat, when we're talking about the actual inner work and the facilitation, were a combination which were symbolic of a dual theme of the phases of a fire alongside variations of reclamation of self. So the first day was gather and regenerate, and we essentially at base camp gathered next to this beautiful burbling stream, and we created an altar with some rocks that I had brought with their permission from the big Lake Michigan, which is right behind me. And basically the instructions were to take 3 rocks and create your own altar nearby our campsite down the way 6 miles. And 1 rock was symbolic of offering to Mother Earth and the land our gratitude. Another was to release an old story. And the final rock was to absorb and contain all the magical memories of the experience. So we also discussed themes like conscious platonic touch and offering the gift of a shoulder massage when someone was in need. And all of these were really beautifully embraced. But I just wanted to open up to the group if they wanted to talk about that first day and the intention setting and the altar, or just kind of what came up, because I know we had some really profound experiences on the trail.
So I'll say that the process of setting the intention right next to Big Creek, which rivers and creeks are part of my alter ego, so they hold a really special place in my heart, gave me this foundational mindset to move forward down the trail. Similarly, the phases of the fire idea of, we're starting by building the small structure of the fire, and the fire kind of starts small and slow. And my mantra was slow and steady along the trail. Take our time. And I was in the back, kind of running sweet in case anyone was slowing down or whatever. And that was just a wonderful way in which to put myself in the mindset to move forward down the trail with intention as a group, and with intention towards the end of it as well, with the 3 rocks and the one to keep and the one to release. So it was a really beautiful way in which to kind of put me in the right headspace to move forward.
Yeah, I think I think the idea of setting an intention right at the beginning of the trip was an important element because, like you said, not all of us have been camping a lot or been camping for a long time. And, when you're entering into kind of sacred space out in nature along a, big creek, to have some intention about how you're going to spend your time, how you're going to be with each other, and, just what the experience is going to be. And then having that altar as, kind of a foundation or as, a sanctuary almost is something that you can like ground yourself in as you're working through entering into the camp and like getting set up and and then sitting in front of the fire. I mean, in California we don't allow campfires, and so it was special for me to be in Montana where it was allowed, but knowing also that I was with people who knew how to maintain a good fire and not let it get out of control and not be worried about were we going to set the forest on fire or anything like that. So there was a lot of intentionality around all of those things that I think helped set the tone for the entire retreat.
I think also mentioning the rug about leaving an old story. For me, it was this retreat itself was kind of a healing process for me. And it was really interesting to see how things were kind of flourishing as I was moving into the trail right at the beginning also as well, creating the ritual and the intention to the beginning. I felt a lot of things and I had a lot of things in my mind as I was like being happy and all. But in the back process of that, I was feeling something that I didn't realize that I used to do, and it was setting the intentions of things. And the nature retreat itself, it taught me how to really set moments so that they become memorable regardless of what they are. And one thing, Marley, that you taught me in that process was even setting the intention for your morning coffee and make that a ritual and enjoying the small little things. And I think we all enjoy our coffees with creamer that we really enjoyed and loved. And those things really still hold and they stay with me.
So coffee took me to a very specific memory. I can't remember which day it was, but it was one of the first nights or first mornings, I guess. And I had slept so deeply. And I sleep better in the backcountry than I do out here in the cozy, comfy world, supposedly. And I was like so like conked out that I think I was one of the last to get up, maybe the last to get up. And I came out to the fire and I was like just kind of this like zombie like moseying towards the smell of the smoke and the fire. And I think it was maybe Adam was like, it's like, hey buddy, how you doing? And I was just like, coffee, coffee. And it wasn't because I was exhausted. It was because I was almost like still asleep because I was resting. Which for me, as far as intention setting, I mean, I think one of the things that was really powerful is I had been kind of feeling a little bit stuck in some like chronic back pains and things before we left. And I just was itching to get out on the trail and to move my body and to move regardless of the weight, and that's funny, right? You hurt when you have no weight on your back, supposedly out here in our machine world. But then you get in the backcountry with all this weight. And it was like weight was shedding off of me as we went out and deeper into the wilderness. And it was wonderful to move in that way. And I just like slowly healed over the course of the trip. And in a lot of ways, it's nice.
And Chance, I think it was probably when we took one of our breaks on the way in on the first day, you had a really profound experience with a tree. And simultaneously, I think it was possibly our first group hug, all group hug, not just platonic touch, which just so happened to fall at the exact same time that the only person that we saw during the entire camping trip passed by us in the moment that we were in a group embrace. And just the fact that we knew that that person needed to see that at that time. But
not only were we in a group embrace, but Chance was literally weeping on my shoulder at the time.
Yeah, it was really, really beautiful. And so day 2, the theme was ignite and rewild. And we talked about what the idea of being our wild selves means. And we talked about what ways do we hold ourselves back from our wild nature, and how can we practice more rewilding in our lives. So I just wanted to open up about how that was received. And Paul, I know you said that rewilding is still a prevalent topic in your mind at this moment. Did you want to say more about that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think we did a lot of howling at the moon. We did a lot of howling in general. We did a bit of, just wildness in camp with each other. But it did carry forward, and it carried forward in a couple of different ways for me. I mean, it carried forward into creating a kind of a wild, another alter ego that I call the rambunctious, raging rejoicer. And and this whole idea of, rewilding, and for me, getting out of my head and not overthinking things too much, because maybe I was even doing that during the trip a little bit, which led to not resting as much as I could have. Um, and yeah, I think it feels like it's sort of an ongoing theme right now, not only for me, but just in the world in general.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning in that too, in the wider world, is some of the momentum that came out of our retreat is we just yesterday in celebration of Earth Day, did a kind of a launching hike for an adventure group here locally. And the excitement that this group of guys in particular, of like, oh, we're out in the wild together and we can just be free and we can be open and honest and we can talk, and like you could just like feel the excitement. One in particular, when we had like kind of our families come together and have dinner, he was talking to me and he was just like, I can't believe you guys are doing stuff like this. He's like, I'm just like so excited about this and I can't wait to participate. I can't wait to contribute and co-create. And so I think that rewilding thing, I think there's like an itch for it right now in our world. And it is, I mean, it's healing. So it makes a lot of sense.
There was this chance. I don't remember how you. I don't like. I don't have the quote, but I always remember you looking at Adam and looking at his eyes and seeing like this bright yellow, no, bright shiny. Oh God, I forgot how it was.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Yes, that.
Oh my
I
gosh,
guess
that's hilarious.
yeah, that's what nature does, right? And also for me, I remember saying like I felt like a hobbit, just like I could just walk barefoot and take everything that I was feeling and touching and smelling. It's the connection with nature, and it's so calm. Yet you feel like so energetic, but at the same time, you feel entirely connected with everything that is around you.
Yeah, and Adam, do you want to describe what the campsite was like in terms of the geography and all the proximity to everything? I mean, we were all assigned with creating our own altars, honoring the earth and the space. And I know like I climbed what I felt like was like half a little mountain to do mine, but can you describe what the space was like for people?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I mean, I think the hike in itself just had so many different dynamics to it than in crossing Big Creek multiple times and being close to it and being in cedar groves and these kind of dense, dark forests. And it was just an amazing journey through this diverse landscape in that little valley. And we came out of one of those kind of denser, darker forests and around a corner and into this large boulder scree field from the big granite mountains that had kind of shed off on the right side. Big Creek off to our left, you couldn't quite see it, but there was a little bit of a meadow there, and this massive boulder with an overhang on it that had been used for eons by people to camp under and have fires under. It was black with smoke. from the fires that had been lit before us. And you could just feel the sacredness of that space, and that people had been there before you, and that it was very, very special. So we kind of built our fire in our kitchen and our rain tarp over by the rock where our communal space was, and put our tent out in the meadow area. So we had a space to sleep a little bit away from our food, because we're in bear country, and that's always important, to distance yourself from where you're cooking and eating. And then that little meadow and that little area we were in kind of closed back into a tight little canyon up in front of us. And so we could walk a little bit further, and the river was roaring right down below you, and kind of really moving through that little canyon. It was like entering a whole different world once you went to that spot on the trail, which was really cool. You felt like you were in a really kind of unique, special, held space in that little area. So, and I will also build on the rewilding side of this that we talked about. Nature has always been my reset, my safe space. Same with, Chance. I'm just a Montana kid who loves being out in the mountains and feeling humbled by the size of everything. But I'll say that this first day at camp, and again, getting back to the intention and allowing yourself to settle into the rhythm that nature has, with the sound of the water and the wind, and just moving slowly. But as Gucci said, you're still really doing, a lot. You're feeling a part of it, is one of the most amazing feelings I get when I'm in nature. It's that all the weight that I've been carrying, and my intention was to let go of the bounds of society that prevent me from being wild, from being my most authentic self. And so that intention, combined with that space that I really feel at home in, and the ability to be like, this is our home for the next 3-4 days, right? This is where we're going to be. And I do a lot of moving in the mountains. Generally, it's climbing a mountain or hiking, but being back and having the time and the space to really soak in all that surrounds us with this intention, with our exercises, with our experiences, really brought that experience to a whole nother level for me.
Beautiful. And Chance, I know you had a pretty profound experience with your altar building and your relationship to your altar in the land and time and space in which it existed. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Jose, did you have something you wanted to add first before I speak to that?
I just wanted to say that as we are talking about our nature retreat, and we kind of like highlight the elements, and as Adam was describing the environment, it just made me feel really emotional, and like it brought me back to that moment, and I was literally looking at what you were describing, Adam, and going back into my memories, and kind of like remembering the feelings, and it really made me emotional. And I love talking about this, and whenever I have a chance, I always get to talk to people and kind of share my experience about the nature retreat, and it's so wonderful.
Thank you. I feel it in my heart too. And I think the biggest thing about like trying to really communicate it with words is that it is accessible. Like, I mean, as someone that doesn't camp ever and walked, the organizers walked 30 miles in a number of days, but it was designed as a 12-mile round trip over a course of 5 days with an optional extra hike to Big Creek Lake. So just like, I wish that people could see what we all know in our hearts and minds around the environment and how safe and sacred it does feel. So yeah, I'll throw it back to you, Chance.
Yeah, I'll just touch on that real quick, is to say that I think that this is one of those things that I firmly believe there's like no person on earth that wouldn't benefit by having an experience like this, right? It is like truly a shift in consciousness. And it's one of the reasons why we're designing our retreats in this way, right? so that we can get more people out there, or even exploring like horseback and stuff at some point, right? Like in different ways to be able to get people into these places. Because when I actually think about that, I've actually wanted to take my mom out to Big Creek Lake, and she's no longer able to make a hike like that. But the reason I think of her is because in connection to my altar building, I had never really done anything quite like that before, and I've always been a spiritual person, but not really like understanding how I best practice it or putting a lot of ritual into it necessarily, except for just going out into the wild, and seeing where it takes me. And so that invitation to set up an altar, it was a pathway to spirit that was like lit for me. And I set up mine on a little mossy rock and all this like kind of rock slough that comes off those mountains that Adam spoke to. And up above me, there was this big kind of like rock wall that was, I don't know, a couple hundred feet up above me, maybe even a little further than that. And I was nestled amongst this like kind of granite rock field. And there was this like triangle started showing up for me everywhere. But there was this triangular like tunnel that went into the mountain. And I sat with my altar and kind of, I guess, prayed, I suppose. I guess that's what you would call it. And then moved into a meditation. And I moved through the darkness of that tunnel and found my way up to the base of those rocks. And it became a giant, like, rock human that is John Bailey, my grandfather. And he saw me and expressed his like pride in who I am and what I've done, and he sang to me a song that he wouldn't know. It's a down tempo electronic song. He wouldn't know it in the life I know it from, right? And through this spiritual realm that I started to tap into, he sang to me, and I wept. And from there, actually, then I went over to kind of the top side of the creek, and I sat and had a conversation with his wife, Doris Bailey, my grandmother. And this is my mom's parents. And hers was actually kind of a little more stern in a way, and was like, "Hey, you've got more in you. You've got some things you can still learn. It's time to actually like listen and gain the wisdom, and and be the man you were meant to be." And so there's a lot more to that story, including like literally this morning me sitting by a river crying. But where that all landed and ended was that I plunged into the creek, and I walked back into camp barefoot with a fishing pole in my hand and my underwear. And I remember, Marley, you just kind of laughing and going, "Yeah, yes." And it was funny because it was, as I look at it, it was not a performative thing. It was me sharing exactly what I do every time I go out there. It was me being comfortable enough to share myself, my body in a way, right? My being in the most wild form that I have to experience in this life. And the freedom that is beyond anything you can imagine.
Amazing. And we really talked about listening to the earth and all of our senses, our sense of smell, sound, taste. And we shared stories. We gathered around the fire once or twice a day, depending on the flow of what everyone was feeling. We facilitated conversation. And Paul, you read some beautiful readings by John O'Donohue about amazing concepts such as color and how we see color. Can you share more about that wisdom that you were sharing with us, including your own writing?
Yeah. So, as I said, I had just been in Scotland and Ireland, and I've been going on this annual retreat in Scotland every year, a kind of a writing creative retreat. And this year, the organizer, who's a friend of mine, suggested that we listen to and or read John O'Donohue's book, The Internal Embrace of Beauty. And it really struck me. I was really amazed by it and into it. And I wrote a bit in Scotland about it. And when I went to Ireland, I actually went to his gravesite and went to the old ruin of an abbey where he used to celebrate Easter Mass when he had even after he had been left the priesthood and kind of did it, in defiance of the Catholic Church, and many people came to it. But his idea of like beauty being kind of the eternal thing that can really bind us together, and that if we brought beauty as a concept even into our politics and even into our societies and into the way that we dealt with each other, we could have a whole new perspective on things. And yeah, I mean, it's, my own writing. I mean, I've been writing poetry now for a little while, and um, I love writing. I love writing poetry. I love sharing it with everybody. And so it was special to read, what had been so full for me to all of you on the retreat, and to read some of my poetry. And, I think that nourished me in a way that hopefully nourished all of you at the same time.
It nourishes us every day, I think. It's safe to say.
Yeah.
I loved John O'Donohue's work so much. I bought 2 copies, one for me and one for my partner. And it also, like, one of his concepts is around embracing the beauty in death, which is something that I talk about a lot. But Paul, I also wanted to welcome you, if you would be open to sharing some of your writing, even today's writing that we heard earlier, to close us out or something. If it's easy for you, I think I would love that personally.
Yeah, I don't know whether I want to read what I wrote today. That was a bit
Okay.
a bit out there.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, you are a radical, Paul.
Yeah.
So we
See if I
also
can find something to read. Have somebody else talk, and I'll look for something.
I
You
can
got it.
intervene. In the meantime, I just want to say that I don't know, Marley, if you have this question for us, like what was one of the highlights of the day or one of the highlights of the entire retreat. But for me, coming from I'm the youngest of everything. So youngest child, youngest what does it call this? Great son. So I never got to experience really the relationship that all my cousins, brothers, and even like all my entire family members with my grandparents. So to be sitting in a campfire, reading at Paul's poetry or the beauty from John Donahue, it was for me. It was something that would transport me to moments that I never experienced before, but I knew that they were there, and kind of like the relationship of my entire family. And in this process of healing, as I mentioned before, it was kind of like understanding my family as well as just having like just sharing with people that I just started to get to know, and it was kind of like seeing my family through them, and that was for me, it was really extremely meaningful.
Mm. Thank you, Jose. And I think we all felt such a sense of kinship and connection and deep, deep wells of gratitude for each other throughout the process, and particularly walking away from it. We talked about things like stories from our childhoods and stories when we felt the most free. We journaled about all kinds of various topics about, feeling the most wild. And, day 3, the concept for the fire was nurture, and the concept for the self was receive. And it was really exploring, what does real nourishment mean to you? And what is your relationship to receiving love, compliments, time, self-love? And so can you all talk about these concepts, which are often inherently sort of feminine by nature in terms of the yin and receiving, but also I would say culturally, particularly in the United States, are concepts that have largely been designed out of, receiving rest and, even time. So would love to hear your take on how that landed with you, and, any other insights you want to share.
Well, let me read this poem and then I'll say something about it. I mean, this poem actually does a little bit tie into kind of some of the feelings from the trip. And I wrote this poem on the island of Pantelleria, which is somewhere out in the Mediterranean in between Sicily and Tunisia. It starts with a quote: "One's destination is never a place, but a new way of seeing things," which I think speaks to a little bit of what we're experiencing on the trip. Four flamingos in the distance dip their beaks into the mirror lake. A gentle breeze pushes the lake water in little ripples to the further shore, where we stand, feet bare, grounded, like Venus, she of beauty, desire, love, and lust, seek to reflect with new intention, to look, see with open hearts, open minds, with feet grounded. Will you forgive yourself? Will you come into your own capacious soul and dip your beak into salty water, into salty conversation, into new rooms through newly opened doors? For you cannot care for people and not care for the earth, and you cannot care for the earth and not care for people, or for four flamingos in the distance dipping their beaks into salty water. And there's a way in which, the nourishment of this trip was, embodied in this poem a little bit in terms of like, I felt like we all opened our capacious souls. We all opened new doorways into each other. We all dipped our beaks into salty conversations, into new rooms through new doorways. There were portals in a way, being out there in nature that we could step through with each other. And, we stood and, kind of feet bare and grounded and, and really, felt nourished with each other, being with each other out in nature and just the nourishment of, and it was interesting because it rained a lot and, but it also felt nourishing being out in the rain and out in the, but we had the protection of the big rock and the big boulder that we were under and the big tent that you crazy people carried out there where we all slept. So, the idea of nourishment was, I think, built into the trip in the way, not only that you facilitated it, Marley, in terms of some of the daily activities that we were doing, but the way that it was planned, the way that Chance and Adam, orchestrated this thing and the way that Guti cooked for us all and nourished us that way. So there was a lot of nourishment going on.
I love that so much, Paul. And that writing is just, heart opening to the nth degree. It's such a, just such a picture of the beauty of your heart. Thank you.
That makes me think of the practice of love and kindness that we facilitated in this experience, which was not only the holding of sacred space and the ability to be vulnerable with each other in these conversations, but the love and kindness that was given once someone was vulnerable and did lean into deep spaces and shadows and hard conversations. So for me, day 3 was a quieter one, and this reflection was a quieter one for me personally. But it was leaning into allowing myself to really truly receive your loving kindness. So it's not something that I know.
There's something too about, day 3 and reflecting and whatnot, and the ability to be silent with each other and not have it be awkward, that there's a way in which, the ability to be silent with each other when you're in a group and not feel the need to have to talk is a nourishment in its own way.
Yes.
And then when
Existence together is enough.
when somebody does speak, it actually is easier to receive it because it's come with thought. I think in our daily kind of status quo existence, right? It's like in some ways when you're having conversations with people, it's like you're yelling over the top of a bunch of other noises and distractions and things, right? But out there, that isn't a thing, and it makes it easier to receive because you're actually not receiving so much sensory input out there, right?
Well, it's a different kind of sensory input.
Well, right. I mean, it's softer, right? And
Yeah, it's a more calming sensory input.
yeah, yeah,
It
I
goes
remember.
back to kind of what I mentioned earlier with settling into the rhythm of being in nature. And while, what you said, Chancellor, I think it's so important for everyone to experience it because settling into that rhythm allows you to sit in that space that Paul's talking about of quiet and reflection and not feeling rushed to say something, to engage without giving it deep thought and without allowing yourself, even if there's nothing to be said, to allow yourself to sit in that.
Yeah.
One of the things we talked about on day 3 was Archon Lashwala's quote, an indigenous author and thought leader, that thinking is listening, and really practicing earth listening, practicing understanding what the voices, spirits, elements of Mother Nature wish to say, and what do they want us to receive, whether that's words or a message or silence or beauty. And I think, yeah, we all had such a deep, deep, deep relationship with that space, which was not something we had to work at, or it just was.
I'd love, Marley, for you to talk a little bit about, what it was like for you being the only woman in the group and also just, how it felt to facilitate this whole thing.
Thanks, Paul. I think it was nerve-wracking for me in the very beginning, only because I was worried about my preparation, which you all can attest to was pretty poor. If we're being honest, I basically didn't have the right shoes. I didn't have half the camping stuff. And these guys picked up the slack and basically had anything I could possibly need. And I was also nervous about going to the bathroom in the woods and and bears. So, I had my fair share of worries. But what was so great was that even though my shoes were an abomination and I wound up wearing Teva sandals for 24 miles or actually, sorry, I think it was, basically 18 miles out of the trip. It actually was super fun and comfortable. Who knew, in socks and Tevas? And the support from the group, it kind of threw me off how unprepared I was. It was almost like I forgot I needed to facilitate because I was in survival mode. And that sounds really extreme. It was only because I had bogus shoes. The trip itself and the trail was completely, I thought, accessible, fun, beautiful. We sang songs on our way in and out, and carrying a big, huge backpack was totally attainable for me. And I kept hearing this funny Pearl Jam song over and over and over in my mind that I have no connection to. But then when I went back to my hotel afterwards, the coffee shop kids who were in their 20s were singing it. There were just so many mystical, magical, beautiful things. And being with you all, I mean, it's funny, I didn't think of it at all as if I was the only woman. Honestly, I just felt like part of the crew. And what I did love a lot was just being able to learn from you all who have immense experience in this realm and such a deep, different connection to nature than I. Or maybe it's the same and it's different, but the survival aspects where I'm more, I recognize its fury while also having a very benevolent relationship. So I loved it. And I felt like we opened up doors, like you said earlier, to each other's hearts in really beautiful and profound ways. And I think it makes me really deeply want and wish for other people to experience it, and to not only for the connection and community, which of course is amazing, but I think there is an inherent connection to nature, which is unspeakable. And it is something that our world deeply needs to remember.
Yeah. That really brought a lot of clarity into the power of the collective, right? Because you speak in reverence of us and our experience in the wild and the survivalist skills, right? I mean, I grew up like out in the backwoods, right? Adam's a farmer boy, right? Like I was running around in the trees barefoot, and I talked about how, yeah, nature's always been my connection to spirit, but I'd never built an altar before, and I did it because you invited us to. And then I received something I'd never had experienced, right? Which is my grandparents, singing and talking to me, right? And it's the power of the collective group because, right, you might hold a fear about bears or lack of preparation. Adam and I don't, right? Not really. And a heightened awareness, and attunement, of course, a respect, but it just allows us all to have an experience that, frankly, as individuals, we wouldn't have otherwise. And I think that's the power of everybody getting to experience something like this. And I think also too, Marley, like a ton of loving kindness and gratitude and inspiration too for you working through those early challenges, because I think that's also part of an experience like this. Is I think Adam, Jose, you two can attest to this. Like there is no wild experience like this where you're not going to have a moment of being challenged. That's what nature does, right? Like that's, you work with it, not against it. Because if you do work against it, it will crush you. But it doesn't want to crush you. It just wants you to listen and to respond, and the power of us coming together, it allows us all to overcome our own limiting beliefs and self-criticisms and things too, right? And then all of a sudden we become something hyper powerful. Yeah.
Thank you. And I did want to say, once I learned more information later about the bears, in that they are highly regional and there's only one per very large area, I then no longer feared the bears. And simultaneously, I was sending a lot of mystical energy into the universe that we would not see a bear, and it worked. So
I don't know. I've been sending lots of mystical energy to see a bear, and it still hasn't come. So I don't know.
Right. I think in Ghostbusters, that's called like crossing the wires or something, like crossing the streams. Yeah. That's my first Ghostbuster reference of my entire life.
I was going to say, who had Ghostbuster reference on our podcast bingo card?
Well, this has been such a great conversation. And, we had a final day 4, which was really around tending to the fire and resting and embracing rest and honoring radical rest. And I just want to open up. I think it's really clear that we all had an amazing time, but I want to open up to anything else that you think helps to illustrate and invite people. What I want to say really briefly is that what this conversation is making me realize is like how much we each brought our own special brand of genius to this, and the genius as it coalesced made it into the perfect experience for us. But also that I think, our genius is wanting to invite people and open this up to a broader audience.
I would build off of that because for me, this community and this experience it's a different way in which I've experienced inner work before. I've been to therapy and I've sat in other group sessions, and there's this component. I learned something from each one of you. I was able to grow and open up in different ways, and it was the genius that each of you brought and your willingness to fully embrace this experience that made it so powerful for me. There's no one person that Marley, you facilitated beautifully in creating that space for us to all dig into different issues and sit and be intentional, but everyone leaning in and being open and vulnerable and participating fully was the most impactful thing for me. And you all helped me grow in such amazing ways. So that was my journey.
Yeah, and that I think that willingness to be vulnerable is because, there was such again, intention of caring for each other, from not only from you all caring stuff for me because, at an age where it's like difficult for me to carry that much stuff and hike 6 miles. But just the care that we had for each other. There were moments throughout the thing where, whether it was, giving shoulder massages or weeping with each other, or, just trying to find ways to take care of each other, made it again so accessible. And, I mean, if I could do this, at 75 years old and not in the best of shape and not having camped for years and years, then almost anybody could do it. And know that you're going in with a group of people that will take care of you, and that caring is a part of the deal.
For sure. I think we can all attest that we can share the load and care and support each other. And also for everyone who will see this, I want to talk to you about food, because some might actually have questions about that. And as a chef, I was in the trail. I'm not a chef, but I was a chef at the trail. Gotta say that enjoying a meal next to a fire with people that you love is way more nurturing than whatever kind of meal that you can have in the machine world or the so-called real world. I think that sitting next to a fire brings something so old in our genetics, and just laughing, looking at each other, thinking about people while you're cooking and the things that they might like, a beef jerky soup for a big hike or whatever it might be. Just experiencing those kind of things in a setting that has no boundaries in terms of like no fixed walls, no running water. Well, of course, a huge body of water, but not like a sink or whatever, is extremely nurturing. And you will always remember it. I still do. And whenever I go camping, either alone or with people, that is something that it always brings me good feelings.
That idea of with people you love too, right? So, we have the pleasure, of course, knowing each other coming into this experience, but I've also experienced our retreats with people that I was just meeting for the first time. And there's something about the wild, Mother Earth, nature, our life force that brings out love. And whether you already love someone or you're meeting somebody for the first time and sharing a deep experience, you fall in love with all of it, and it just deepens. And I think for me, when we did our first retreat, and this group we actually took all the way to the lake, as we were climbing the staircase, as we call it, to get up to the lake. As we approached, I slipped to the back, right? So I like motivated them up the staircase, and then I slipped to the back, and I watched them arrive at the lake and at the view that looks over these granite mountains sweeping across the Bitterroot, and the look on their faces. And I experienced the same thing, Adam, when we walked out into Howling Canyon, right? And the view opened, and I'm looking at you all having this awe, this wonder on your faces. And both times I cried. The first time I like wept because I was seeing each person fall in love with life, let alone nature, just with being there in that moment in existence. And I don't know that there's a greater calling in this world, and I don't know that there's a greater thing to be a witness to, and I don't know that there's a more pure form of love than watching somebody else fall in love. And that might even be with themselves in that moment, and how proud they are that they put themselves there, that they got themselves there, that a group of people helped them get there. Unreal. And the most real thing on earth, too.
Well,
Yeah, and I want to just
chills.
mention,
Whew.
I want to mention the boulder again, because the boulder itself, as Adam put it so well, is ancient and has seen countless different original peoples, all kinds of beautiful action through space and time. And we had a lot of profound moments with that boulder. I know there was a moment we were sharing something really deep, and I feel like I just like touched it and started bawling. And then, I know Adam and Jose shared a moment of really beautiful, mystical
Mm.
truth. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. Adam, you can intervene me whenever you want, but it was the first night we had finalized the bear hang, which was much fun. And we just we finalized covering the fire, letting it just sit there because of the entire day that we had. And we felt like this kind of wind coming through up up the hill and just going through the forest into us. And it was one of those moments and you kind of like stay silent and you feel everything that is around you. And I just said to Adam with our eyes closed, like, dude, I'm hearing songs and like ancient songs, not like nothing new. I feel like people are speaking to us, and it felt like we were we were blessed, we were welcomed, and it was also kind of like they giving us permission to stay there.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add than that. The drums, and
Yes.
it was that feeling of being welcomed and very safe in that
Mm.
space.
Mm.
Because as a trail guide, I felt compelled to be on alert at night for noises and things rustling in the bushes just in case. But as I sat with that after that experience, it felt like we were being watched over. We were welcomed because we came with the intention
Hmm.
to honor that place and to grow ourselves and our own awareness. And because we showed up with that intention every day and through all our actions, we were brought in as part of the people who belonged there.
So beautiful. And the great part is that we have just secured our dates for this year's retreat, which is going to be October 1st through the 5th, I believe. That's the tentative dates, not tentative, probably permanent dates. And so the other thing is, if you're curious, we actually gather weekly for inner work facilitation on Thursdays called Fun and Flow. We'll drop a link here for that. So if you are someone that doesn't want to show up as, cold to a nature retreat in the backcountry, there's lots and lots of opportunities to warm up. But also just know whether you are man, woman, non-binary, non-gender conforming, you're welcome at this party. It is beautiful. And there is generative education no matter where you're at in your inner work story, as well as where you're at in your relationship to camping. So I just want to open up the floor once more to this beautiful crew that I get to commensurate with often. If there's anything else to leave, any final parting words?
Well, I've said it before, but I just have such immense gratitude for this group of people for carrying me into nature and taking care of me and and giving me this experience because I don't know that I would have done it on my own. And just the whole experience is something that I hope everybody goes through at some point in their lives, whether they're older or younger, or wherever they are, as you said, wherever they are in their work, wherever they are in their life, to just have the ability and the experience of being out in nature with a group of people that really care about each other is a profound experience.
I'd carry
I
the
think
weight
that
all over again for you, Paul, because
Yeah.
it was an honor to share that space with you and to have you there. Like I said, everyone brought so much to this experience, and it was just an amazing, amazing depth and beauty, and you added so much to it. So do it again in a heartbeat. Hope to.
I mean, I think that's the plan, right?
Right. Just like 6 months, I think. Okay, well, so much love to you all. Loving kindness to all of your hearts, and loving kindness to anybody listening to this who's curious. We're pretty friendly, so reach out anytime, and we'll answer any questions that you might have. There'll be lots of links down below around ways you can get involved and get engaged. And thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Y'all.
Thanks, Mark.